I'm Debbie Magwood. I'm the founder and executive director of the West Island Cancer Wellness Center. And welcome to this amazing Zoom into Wellness called Demystifying the Exercise Prescription. For those of you who might not know us, I'm just going to give you a little background of why we do these Zoom into Wellnesses. So first of all, it's open to the entire community, not just people who've been through the Cancer Wellness Center. And we do that because we want to offer some of the things that we do in the center, we want to offer that out to the greater community. So, and sometimes the greater community doesn't quite know what cancer wellness is. So, briefly stated, cancer wellness is a comprehensive approach that complements traditional medicine by addressing the 7 pillars of wellness. These 7 pillars are aimed at empowering individuals who are living with cancer to have a more proactive, positive experience through their cancer journey. The 7 pillars are physical, emotional, psychological, social, spiritual, practical, and systemic. So next we'll move on to our amazing presenter, our special guest. Her name is Dr. Selena Sheed Bergdahl. Dr. Selena holds a bachelor's degree in exercise science, a master's degree in kinesiology, and a PhD in medical physiology. Her research focuses on exercise prescription for managing type 2 diabetes, inflammation, and insulin resistance. During her postdoctoral studies at McGill, she explored the impact of cancer, cachexia, and chemotherapy on skeletal muscle health in long-term childhood leukemia survivors. Now, as a faculty member at McGill University, her research investigates exercise interventions for inflammation and insulin resistance conditions. Without further ado, I invite you to listen to my good friend, Selena. Welcome, Selena.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I really appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me for this. What I'd kind of like to do with the talk this evening is present a little bit about exercise prescriptions. So if you ever found that the terminology, you weren't quite clear of what things were, and a little bit how to take the reins for yourself for exercise prescription. So you're given a little bit of tools. I'm going to try to aim some of the courses that I teach for kinesiology students. I'm going to try to aim like to mix up 3 or 4 classes for you this evening. So you have a basic understanding of what exercise prescription is, what exercise is, and what physical activity is. So I'm going to share my screen. So I hope everybody can see this. So the talk this evening is demystifying the exercise prescription. And so I like to say it's walking the talk. We hear a lot about this in, like, for example, gym talk, but just so that you understand a little bit of what all these terms are referring to. So this is me. We have to do this for university, so I have no conflict of interest to declare. I am again very honored to be presenting this evening to you. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at some of the common concepts in exercise training. Of course, as Debbie had mentioned, you can put questions in chat. But I also think that there's going to be some time at the end. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time on your questions after the main part of the talk. So let's start. So some of the goals that we have for this evening is what is physical activity and what is exercise and what are the differences between those two terms. To give a little bit of the basic concepts of exercise training. What is an exercise prescription? We often hear about exercise prescriptions. People go to see trainers. So this is a little bit of the background on what they're working with. The next is how can I be fit, F-I-T-T, and we'll talk about what that means. And a little bit about what I'm supposed to do or what we are supposed to do. Clarify a little bit of the terminology, and again, to be able to ask your questions, and hopefully I'll get some answers to you for all of that. Again, um, so before we start to exercise, I think it's very important, and of course at the center you are very, very well. Uh, you're kept safe on this. But please make sure ahead of time that it's safe for you to engage in exercise. If you have any doubts at all, talk to a nurse, talk to a doctor, another healthcare professional, and you should assess your risk. What do I mean by that? Online, you can find forms that look like this if you have any questions or if you are not sure, if you haven't exercised in a long time, or after cancer treatment or during cancer treatment, just to get a little bit of an idea of what your risk is and what level of exercise is suitable for you. It's a very user-friendly tool, and you can always, if you have questions again, please speak to a healthcare professional. Okay, so the first myth I'd like to kind of clarify a little bit this evening is physical activity and exercise. A lot of the time we use these terms interchangeably, but they're not quite the same thing. So that's the myth. They're not the same thing. So what is the difference between physical activity and exercise? So physical activity is any kind of movement above rest. So anytime you move, if you go for a walk to the mailbox, if you take the dog out, if you do gardening, if you are strolling around the neighborhood, that's all considered physical activity, as is light housework, moving around, dancing. Exercise is when physical activity is repeated and follows a prescription and has a goal. So now all of a sudden we've structured it. So rather than movement for movement's sake, now we have a goal to it. I also like to use the analogy a little bit. Physical activity is, for example, a little bit like a pill. It exists. There's a certain point to it, but on its own, it's one isolated pill. When you get a prescription from the doctor, that pill then is taken in combination with other pills, given at a certain dose at a certain frequency, how many times per day you have to take it or how many times per week you have to take it. And it's to treat a specific condition. So this is the same as exercise. Exercise takes physical activity, kind of bundles it up in a package. You have a prescription attached to it, and it's also attached to a certain goal. So you might want to ask too, which is more important? Why should I do one more than the other? But they are both important and should be incorporated in day to day. So for example, you can follow an exercise prescription. If you can, for example, if you're going to the center or if you are doing a walking plan or if you decide you would like to join a gym or some sort of group fitness class, that would be considered part of your prescription. But there's nothing wrong with taking the stairs and taking a walk during the course of the day and avoiding long periods of sitting. So both are very important in your day-to-day. So our next myth is physical activity. It has to be hard, which is another myth. I think the thing that's most important with physical activity is you should be choosing things that you like to do. It should be conceptualized as moving more through your day. So like I said, break up sitting time. Don't sit down for a long period of time. If you're watching television in the evening when there's a commercial, get up, move around the house. You could do a little stretch. You could go get a glass of water. You could do whatever you need to in those breaks. If you're at work for lengthy periods of time, avoid sitting for more than, for example, 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Get up and move around a little bit. The goal, more or less, for this is to keep yourself healthy. And so what are the current guidelines? They say about 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per week, which actually only works out to about 30 minutes a day. So if you take 10 minutes in the morning, you have a little walk, you take 5-minute breaks throughout the day, and then you take another 10-minute walk in the evenings or late afternoons, you're getting your 150 minutes per week quite easily. So I think that's really important to emphasize is that it doesn't take much. And whatever you do is better than not doing it. So rather than having big lofty goals, sometimes just starting with bite-sized pieces actually really helps. And it's not that it's done for nothing. The other thing that's really important too is think about getting a healthy amount of sleep, trying not to sit for lengthy periods of time, like I said, and add in movement that challenges your muscles. So, for example, to take the stairs if you have the option to do that. And then add in activities that safely use your balance and flexibility. So, for example, just a simple stretch. If you are doing yoga classes perhaps once a week, or if you're doing some dancing, all of those activities end up contributing to being or leading a physically active life. So just to, I always start off with this when I teach some of my kinesiology students. And sometimes this seems like, oh, well, it's only half an hour. I'm sure, this is what I'm doing. But it's unbelievable how when people look at what they're doing in a day to day, and our society kind of supports these notions that we end up not really doing a lot. So, for example, if you have somebody who has a car that is parked in their house in the garage, so you get up in the mornings, you sit down, you make a cup of coffee, you read the news, and then you get into your car and then you drive to work. And of course, it's always a badge of honor to have the parking space the closest possible to the door. You go into the office, you go into the elevator, it takes you to the floor where you work, and you sit down at your desk and you work. And often people have printers right behind them. Some of my colleagues even have fridges that are besides them. Um, or you eat at your desk lunch. And then time moves rather quickly when you're at work. And then you're doing the same thing but reverse. So now you're going back into the elevator on the way home, getting back into the car, going back home and sitting down and sitting in front of the TV with your dinner. So when you look at that, actually, the amount of movement that we do is very small and it escapes us quite often. So having a plan or having a recognition or an awareness of what we should be doing in the course of the day becomes extremely important. So just as a visual, a healthy 24 hours really should include a variety of activities. So moderate to vigorous, like I said, an accumulation of 150 minutes per week is in fact only about 30 minutes a day. So using light physical activity, such as even standing, so standing desks could be a nice solution for this. Or like what we've done in our own office at McGill, we have one printer that we have to walk all around the corridor, go to the printer, and then come back rather than having a printer behind us. But just being aware of what you're doing and how you're moving throughout the day. Sleep is also important. This is where our bodies recover. This is the rest, which is almost as important as when you're actually doing movement. So consistent bedtimes, wake up times, between 7 and 8 hours of good quality sleep, limiting screen time before TV, before bedtime because it has the light that tends to wake you up. And then limiting the time of sedentary behavior. We always like to do, we can do a lot of sedentary activities, for example, reading, knitting, crocheting, talking on the phone. But just to break up those periods of time is really important. So when you are enjoying an activity, so for example, reading, maybe make a plan at the end of every chapter to get up and move around a little bit. And be aware of what you're doing. And then you're going to realize once you're planning a little bit of these activities, how easy it actually is to find ways to move during the day and ways to keep active. So another thing that we use often, and this is really important because it kind of self-adjusts. So if you're not feeling really well on a given day, or if you start to be more physically active, where things become easier and easier, it's a good idea sometimes to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how does this activity feel? So for example, here, if you're doing nothing at all and sitting down on the couch, it could be a 0 or a 0.5. And then it starts to move up anywhere between 1 and 10. 1 being very, very light activity, all the way to 10, which is maximal. And like I said, if you are not feeling well, or for example, if you're going through any sort of cancer treatment, facing chemotherapy, and you're very tired anyway, you can self-adjust the activity so that it represents the intensity that you had intended it to be. So it's not too difficult for you, but it's in the range of where you wanted it. And like I said too, once you start to become physically active on a regular basis, you can also make things a little bit harder. You can pick up the pace when you're walking, for example, a little bit more, add a few more stairs on, maybe get up a couple more times. So this Borg scale, it's really used to judge intensity of the activity. And like I said, it adjusts to how you're performing on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing that I also like to do when I'm working with clients is it's really easy. A scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And people are able to come up with the responses very quickly. So big question is always, what can I do? Everybody's here, so obviously there's an interest in physical activity and exercise, and this tends to be one of the most common questions, and um, especially because I have friends who are physicians, and sometimes that's the most challenging question that they face, because often a medical doctor will say to you, well, you should exercise, or exercise will be helpful for this, but the first question that you have is what can I do? Um, so some of the things that you can do, like I said, it's based on about 150 minutes, is based on about 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per day. So we can even break that down so that you're not facing, especially when time is such a barrier often. We can break that down into 3 times 10 minutes per day. Use the Borg scale or an equivalent to maintain your intensity. So for example, if you're walking your dog, and you want to hit this moderate to vigorous, say this should be approximately a 6 on 10 for activity levels. So it gives you a way of adjusting. And I can tell you the walk, when I'm on my way to the office in the summer when the weather is beautiful, I can walk a certain pace, and all of a sudden in the winter, when now I'm for every step up I do to get to McGill, it's like 3 steps back with the ice and the snow. It's a lot more challenging. So of course, then I have to alter the pace in which I'm walking to reflect those intensity changes. So that's a good way to gauge what you're doing. The things that are really most important are to discover activities that you enjoy doing. If you don't like what you're doing, the likelihood of you continuing it or finding pleasure in it is a lot less. So discover things that you enjoy doing and incorporate that activity in your daily life. So rather than it necessarily being like an isolated part where I have to get on a treadmill for 30 minutes and I have to do this, like I said, you can break it down. You can find activities that you really enjoy doing. And if you enjoy doing it, more likely to be sticking to them.
Selena, I
Yes.
I have heard over and over again this whole idea of having to walk 10,000 steps a day, and that should be our goal. What do you think about that?
Um, I think it's a really good question. There's a lot of literature that's out on that right now, and the 10,000 steps actually came from musicians, where they always say, "Oh, 10,000 hours that you have to be spending practicing your instrument." So the analogy moved itself to exercise, where you have to do things for 10,000. Um, to do anything is better than to do nothing. The more, and we're going to see this when I get into exercise, the more you do, of course, there's more benefits. But sometimes even to hit 500 steps to 1,000 steps to 5,000 steps, um, if you can do it, it's better than to aim for the 10,000 steps, because you also get the opposite. Like if you can do it and you enjoy doing it, that's great. But in the case of aiming for 10,000 steps and you're finding it discouraging, or you find that you're not able to do that, maybe reset your goals and maybe do the less, but do that less more consistently. And I think that's kind of what the direction of the research is taking us into. I hope I answered your question okay, Debbie.
You answered it wwonderfully,
I
Selena.
always have great conversations with you, so this is awesome.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Um, so this is our next myth. If I'm not doing full workouts, it's not worth doing. And I really would like to break this myth. It really doesn't take much to reap the benefits of becoming more physically active. And I'm going to show you this graph um, or or visual. And if you take a look at the benefits, even when you're doing at the far left-hand side where it says active living, you'll see right off the bat that the benefits curve goes up very quickly. So that's just basically to illustrate the fact that you get a lot from even small amounts of exercise, and that even reflects what Debbie's question just was. Um, so we have different types of physical activity here, which is shown. So you have a lot of light, moderate, tens of minutes to hours if you're going for a long walk. You could be walking around Fairview, enjoying a stroll with a friend or a partner or um, siblings or anybody that you have. It could be hours and you don't even notice that you're doing it. I just want to say on the far right, just not to be discouraging, but people do overtrain. And this is what we face sometimes with athletes, where they say, oh, well, I'm doing a lot. So if I'm doing a lot, more is better. But in some cases, in those situations, they also face injury. So I think it's really important, and this can kind of reflect general population as well. Keep in mind that while you're doing things, and if something is uncomfortable for you or it becomes painful, or if I showed you that from that Borg scale before, if the intensity is higher than where you had intended the activity to be, maybe pull it back a little bit, see how you feel. As I said before, exercise, we're moving away from the no pain, no gain mentality and really saying, okay, what is feasible for me? What is enjoyable for me? And although I'm challenging my body to do it, we shouldn't be talking about pain in there. So here we have just a nice visual to say that even small amounts of physical activity can provide you with a whole host of benefits. And then on top of it, once you feel comfortable doing that, you're more likely to start to say, hey, I really enjoy this. I'm having a good time. Give me more. And so then a little bit more and a little bit more. So here, now we've moved from physical activity, which is more of an unstructured type of movement. It's for fun. There's no time requirement for it to happen. It's just moving day to day. But now we're going to layer that a little bit. Now we're going to take a look at exercise. And so the myth is exercise is only for gym rats. There's no way that it is for me. And that's, again, big myth. So we're going to debunk that one as well. So regular physical activity can carry or can come in very many different forms. Um, and regular exercise gives you a wide variety of benefits, anything from keeping a healthy weight, reducing risk of cancer, reducing risk of heart disease, dementia, and depression, chance to socialize, reducing risk of falls in over adults, reducing the risk of developing osteoporosis. There's a whole bunch of a whole host of benefits that come. Also reducing the risk of diabetes, and in a lot of cases, even management of diabetes. So these are really as like I said, a whole host of benefits for exercise. So to answer the question, is exercise for me? Yes. Exercise is for everybody. It kind of really depends on what you're doing and what your prescription is. So what can I do for exercise? All exercise is based on physical activity, but not all physical activity is exercise, meaning that I can still do strolls, have fun for the sake of having fun moving. And then I can also have my exercise prescription on top of that. And so, like I said before, exercise is repeated, structured, and intentional with goals in mind. It's based on the FIT principle. And I said, how do we keep fit? So FITT. And so we look for things like frequency, intensity, time, and type. And I'm going to go over that a little bit about what they mean. But it's a little bit like that prescription I was telling you. If the doctor's going to give you a medication, um, frequency would be how many times do you take it. Intensity would be the dose or the milligrams of it. The time is for how long would you be taking it, and the type would be the type of medication. We apply the same principles to exercise. It should always be progressed, so make it more challenging as you get used to it. So, for example, if you're looking on a scale of 1 to 10, something that's a 6. But if you're doing it more and more often and your body gets used to doing it, then maybe it ends up being more of a 4 or a 3. So maybe increase that intensity so that it sticks to that initial 6 goal that you had. It can also be regressed, meaning making it less challenging if it's harder than you thought. Or, for example, if you're not feeling well on a given day or you're recovering from a cold, or like I mentioned before, if you are undergoing chemotherapy at that point in time, be kind to your body and listen to it and maybe take down the pace a little bit so that you're maintaining a 6, but it stays a 6 and doesn't sneak up to a 10. But I'm going to emphasize this so often in the talk this evening. Exercise should be enjoyable. It should be something that you enjoy doing, that you're feeling good doing. So I mentioned the
Selena,
fit
I have
principle.
another question to throw
Oh
in at
yeah,
this
for
point.
sure.
Um, when we're considering the fit, which
Mm-hmm.
variable is more important, the frequency or the intensity? So if I'm was at a 6 and now I'm at a 4, which one would I go to first?
Aha, very interesting question. So frequency, I'm going to explain some of this. I'm going to show you a picture in a moment, but very briefly, you can alternate between these. If you're doing a really hard exercise bout, you will choose to do it less often. If the intensity is light, you'll do it more often. So it, they kind of play together. And I'm going to show you an image in a moment that kind of demonstrates um, how these interact together. I know it's a cliffhanger. Uh, so again, here we have our frequency, how often, our intensity is how hard, time is how long, and type is what kind of exercise that we're doing. Um, so I'm coming to you, Debbie, to finish answering your question in 1 minute. So how do we use fit? So basically, to take physical activity and use the fit principle will give you an exercise prescription. It's basically organizing bouts of physical activity where you know exactly how you're doing it, when you're doing it, how often you're doing it, how hard you're doing it, and for what reason. And then that is going to meet your goals. And the goals could be anything from I'd like to be more active to I'd like to be able to participate in one of those half marathons or a walk, or um, just to become stronger or have better balance, or just to build up to another level. So there are sets of goals, and those goals are, if they're meaningful to you, they resonate for you, you're more likely to accomplish those. So this is where I'm going to go to Debbie's question here. Okay, so this is an image that I often show in my classes. So the playoff between frequency and intensity is just basically shown here. So, like for example, in the you see performance with training stimulus. If there's enough of a stimulus, you're going to get tired and then you're going to recover. And then it's going to take you to a new level of training. And then if you get tired again, you perform your physical activity bout, you get tired, and then you go up to another level because your body is organizing itself. It's trying to figure out, oh, I didn't like what happened there. It was a little uncomfortable. So then the body starts to adapt. Um, and then you do that training stimulus again, and the body starts to adapt again. So you have these repeated bouts of exercise. So we're following the A line here now. If the bout of training is the same, you don't really get the benefits of those. Or if the bouts are too far apart, then the body tends to forget what's just happened. So they have to be close enough that allows you to recover, and they have to also be they also have to adapt. So as you start to train, you also have to change the intensity. So I'm going to go back to Debbie's question here. So we just covered the A and the B. So if I have a very strong training stimulus, and I feel very tired, it's going to take me a little bit longer to recover from it, so that I come back to my kind of my baseline. So if I have a very intense bout of exercise, then I'm going to have less frequency during the week. If I have a lighter bout of exercise, I can do it more often because I recover fairly quickly. So I'll give an analogy. If you are going to get onto a bus and you have already been at the bus stop waiting, and you get up on the bus, you give your bus pass, you walk past the bus driver, you sit down and you're like, okay, I realize that I just walked up the stairs of the bus. I might have some bags that I'm carrying, but I'm able to do this fairly often. If I had to run up a hill and run to catch that bus, by the time I sit down on the bus, I'm not feeling that great. I probably have a hard time talking. And I'm going to feel those effects of that run for a longer period of time before I go back to baseline. So this is kind of a little bit of and you won't be ready to, or won't be too excited to be running for the next bus. So in that case, you need a longer period of time because that running activity took more out of you. So you have to leave a little bit longer space. So the more intense that activity is, the longer time you need to recover. So if I do a very intense or a fairly intense bout of exercise, I might only want to do that maybe 3 times per week. If I do a very light bout of exercise, like we talked about with the physical activity, just to go for a stroll, I could do it multiple times even in a day and I'm feeling good about it. So there is an interplay or an interrelationship between frequency and intensity. So the more the body is worked, the more time the body needs to recover. I hope I kind of clarified that, Debbie, and tell me if I just kept rambling on forever.
No, it was very clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Um, So again, why is intensity important? So the intensity part now, we talked a little bit about frequency, how many times per week, and that's really actually dependent on the intensity. So how hard you're working. And you want to keep the challenge up. So we talked a little bit about regression and progression and regression, knowing when you are working harder than you intended. And so, like I said here on the right-hand side, there's a little bit of a visual about what the Borg scale looks like. Something is very, very easy, starting to get hard, very hard, and so hard I'm going to stop now. And so the type of activity that you're doing should be matching what your goal was. So for example, if I say, 4 to 6, it's starting to get hard to very hard. And so you have an idea visually or mentally where you want to end up being. So why is time important? This is how much time you're spending on your activity. It's very dependent on how much time you have. Like I said before, you can even break down exercise into small 10-minute bouts. Um, and again, if you're using stuff like or programs like high intensity interval training, that can shorten time as well, where you do a higher intensity for a minute and a lower intensity for a minute, higher intensity for a minute, a lower intensity for a minute. And I know they have a walking program that a running, how to learn how to run, where you run for 1 minute, walk for 5, run for 1 minute, walk for 5. So this is a way of getting an interchange between high bouts of exercise and low bouts, allowing for recovery. And so this maximizes a little bit of the time efficiency so that you can shorten your bouts because you have those high intensity peaks, but they're not too long and not too short, and they can be manageable as well. So most important question here is how much time do you have, and work with that. And again, if you want to break down the exercise components into 10-minute bouts, you can do that as well. It's more important to do something that you have time for, that you're not feeling stressed out doing, and you once, if you find that you have more time, you can always add to it, but at least this is a good starting point of where you have to commence. So I gave a little bit of an example about what a high intensity interval training looks like. And so in this case, it provides you with a little bit more intensity than if you just did a stroll or a walk, because you're interspacing the lower intensity with a higher intensity. So you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck, for lack of better terms, when you're doing things like that. So, and then you can manage it and recover in the low intensity bout. So this is an example of how to use high intensity interval training to get an effective workout. So why is type important? We did the FIT, so this is the last T here. The type of exercise is how you work out is how you're going to be training. And the type of exercise is a little bit of how likely you are to continue, how much you're going to enjoy it, and the more likely you're to stick with it. So if you find some activity that you really enjoy, it's better than not. That's the goal. You want to find something that you enjoy. So case in point is, for example, if you're not enjoying running or jogging, but you really like line dancing, and you can do line dancing 3 times a week, pick the line dancing. So that's a good starting point for you to be more physically active. And if you look forward to the activity, you're more likely to perform it. Um, so I said to you before, think of FIT, F-I-T-T, as your exercise prescription. So frequency, how many times per week or per day. Intensity is how hard. Time is how long each session is. And type is what delivery it is, or what you're using to actually exercise. And so that ends up being your exercise prescription. So a few other important exercise concepts that you may hear when you start to work out. Is recovery important? We tend to not give enough emphasis on recovery. Recovery is where the body adapts to the training. So like I showed you in that image, the A and the B. Sorry, I didn't get to the C, but the C is basically when things are too hard and the body can't figure itself out, you start to overtrain, or if you put too much training in the course of a day or more than what you had intended to do, and your body starts to get physically really tired, but then you keep pushing yourself and pushing yourself. Um, that also could lead to for example, injury, or it could lead to you're not training properly because your body can't sort out what's happening. So in this case, though, recovery is important, allowing that extra time during the day, or allowing that extra time in between exercise sessions, knowing that your body is going to start to adapt to it. And it figures out how to compensate for the stress. We like to think exercise is fantastic. And again, I'm in kinesiology, so we all think exercise is the best. But it is a stress, and we're teaching our bodies to compensate for the stress. And that's why exercise is so very important. So when you apply the stress, but you allow adequate recovery, this is where you get the most amount of adaptations to occur. So some of the components of an exercise training program. So again, we're going to go to the structure. So we're going to look at things like you want to do aerobic components, so something cardiovascular. So for example, you want to spend a period of time where you're getting your heart rate going, you're going to be moving blood around your body, you get your lungs working, you get your heart working. Those are all cardiovascular responses. Then also what we want to add to that too, and not forget, is strength exercises. It doesn't have to be big weights. It could be even using cans at home, or small hand weights, or elastic bands, or even body weight. So for example, you could do push-ups against a wall if you're not able to do push-ups, like normal structured push-ups. Programs like Pilates are often based on body weight exercises, so we can promote strength training through just body weight. Squats is another type of exercise. So there's a whole variety of types of strength exercises that we can do. We tend to ignore flexibility. Flexibility is very important. It prevents injuries from occurring. But also, for example, if you're sitting for a long period of time, you get up and everything it's sore and it hurts and it's awkward and it takes forever to kind of move yourself out of bed. This is where flexibility becomes really important, even if it's a question of doing a simple stretch when you're seated, or just to like put one leg out in front of you and try to aim to run your hands down your thighs just to get a stretch lower back, and your gluteus muscles, or just to do a stretch up in the air and just allow a stretch to occur. And most of the time when we do stretching exercises, people go, wow, that felt really nice. So treat yourself. Do some flexibility exercises or stretches throughout the day. The
Selena,
other thing,
I'm
yes,
I'm I'm uh, I'm remembering that earlier on in the presentation, you actually said that we should avoid sitting for more than 30 to 40 minutes.
I know.
And we've been sitting here for 45. So I was wondering if maybe just for a minute you could just walk us through a couple of stretches we could do just sitting here watching you.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I was actually going to have you guys do in a moment was just to simply even stand up. So if everybody will take this moment, because Debbie always practices what we preach. So if everybody just wants to do a quick stand, and then I can take you through a couple of stretches. It's a little hard with the video, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time, but I'll do my best on this. So if everybody wants to just stand up for a moment, and then you can just enjoy that. You could reach your arms way above your head for a moment, do a quick stretch. And what you can also do is you could take your shoulders and you could roll them back. So you're going to move your shoulders towards the back, put your shoulder blades together and hold that for a moment. And then you could just move your shoulders towards the front and then alternate between one or two rolls to the front and one or two rolls to the back. We tend to have really tight chests because we tend to be slouched over. So try to open up the chest. Take a deep breath when you're doing that. That's fantastic. And then what we could do is then we could sit down. And then you could put your legs in front of you. And then again, like I was saying before, you could put your hands on your thighs and just kind of take your hands down your thighs as far as you can that's comfortable. You should feel a little bit of a stretch, but I don't want to have anybody going, ow, what happened here? So do a stretch and just breathe while you're doing it. So you can breathe in and then breathe out and try to take it down a little bit, breathing out. You breathe in a little bit and then breathe out, and you could take your hands down a little bit further. So you basically what you're just doing is the you're basically your bum muscles, your lower back, and the back of your thighs. You're going to just all stretch that out and just breathe. Okay, so these are just a few little things that you can do. I know when I take airline flights, especially KLM, I think is awesome. They give you a little exercise training, and I always like to check it out. How's everybody feeling? We're all back. Fantastic. Um, so last but not least in an exercise training program is balance. Um, there is a risk of falling as we get older. And part of it is just that we just don't challenge those systems in our body. So the muscles that we need to maintain posture, maintain balance, also just to be able to be used to kind of going off kilter a little bit and coming back. So again, don't do anything that's going to put you at risk. If you don't feel comfortable, have a solid object nearby that you can use as a guide. But balance exercises are also really important, and there are different ways that you can challenge your balance systems. For example, even if you have a sturdy chair beside you, lifting up one leg at a time. and then putting it back down, and then finding a little bit more of a like challenge your system a little bit more. Let go of that chair when you're ready for it. And then you can do things that can challenge your proprioceptors a little bit, and this is what maintains our balance, so that you can lift up your head a little bit and look up towards the ceiling, and that further challenges you as well. But again, just be aware of if you're off balance or feeling dizzy. Really count on a table, something solid, or a chair that's nearby. Like I said before, cardiovascular aerobic training, it gets your heart pumping, increases blood flow to the body. It should be in at least about of 10 minutes of sustained activity. So examples is walking, jogging, dancing. It could be on an elliptical machine. It could be on a rowing ergometer. There's lots of different types of cardiovascular training you can do. Resistance training, you should be working your major muscle groups. So, for example, biceps in the front of the arms, the triceps, the chest, which we just did the stretches, the chest in the front, upper back. You can do lower back. You can do the abdominal exercises. We often forget about our abdominals. This is what results in a lot of lower back issues, and then our leg muscles. So these are all important groups to target. You could do it with endurance-based strength training, which is you do less weight but more often, especially if you're starting it. Or if you're trying to develop muscle, then you're going to start to switch again. You do a higher weight with lower repetitions. So higher weight less often. Like I said before, you can use your own body weight, and don't forget your core. So again, your back, but your abdominals are very important as well. Balance and flexibility. I touched upon this before, but it challenges your balance. It's good for fall preventions. It's also good for injury prevention. It helps to preserve a nice range of motion so that you're able to do activities. So, for example, if you want to lift up to get something from up above, or to even brush your hair, things like that. And if you've had any, especially for breast cancer treatment, some of the surgery, it's really important to get some of that flexibility training for shoulders, for the chest, to get to be able to move your arms and regain that range of motion. It's equally important for any type of preservation of range of motion as well. And so what can you rely on for that, or where can you turn? Yoga, Pilates, and dance are very good examples of each of these. And just to get some of that balance and flexibility training. We tend not to focus that much on this, but it's very, very important. The other concept in exercise we have are warm-ups and cool-downs important. They're very important. So warm-ups allow the body to prepare for exercise, both physically and mentally, gets blood flow already going to the muscles. It should be dynamic in nature. Don't hold long stretches for a warm-up. You can do it for a cool-down, but for a warm-up, we really want to start to warm up the body. Cool downs allow the body to recover. You go back to the state that you were before you started the activity. It prevents abrupt stops from exercise. It allows the body to naturally recover. It facilitates recovery a little bit as well. You're kind of getting the body to kind of go back to its natural state, and you're allowing the body to like you have metabolic byproducts that form when you're doing exercises. It allows them to be used up and to be cleared out by the body, and this is a good way to go back to a resting state. Sometimes it's also, I have to be honest, it's nice. You have a few quiet 5 minutes at the end of an exercise routine where you can do some nice deep stretches and enjoy the few minutes of quiet before you go back to your day to day. We talked about progression and regression, so I'm not going to spend much time here. But when you train regularly, your body gets used to the intensity, so you're going to have to bring it up. Regression, if the activity ends up being more challenging, you can pull it back a little bit so that you are in the target zone that you want it to be in. And so when you put all the pieces of the puzzle together for the exercise prescription, we start with a warm-up, which prepares our muscles and our bodies to work. We do a bit of aerobic cardiovascular training. Then we go into some resistance training, have some balance and flexibility and a cool down. You don't have to do these all in one time. I can have a little warm up, just do cardiovascular, little cool down, and then I could do my resistance on another day. Or, like I said before, if I do cardiovascular, I could do that 3 times, 10 minutes over the course of my day. I could do some of my resistance in the evening. So you don't have to keep yourself to having one block, but you can break down these pieces of the puzzle together. And as long as you're doing these activities, that's the main goal. Besides that, it's really important, like I said before, just to be active on a day-to-day basis. Find opportunity for movement, even if it's to forego going on the escalator. If you can walk up instead of riding up, or if there's stairs instead of an elevator, or if you can park your car a little further, you don't have to be that car that's exactly by the entranceway. You can move it off a little bit. Or if you take public transit, get off one bus stop before yours normally would be, and you could walk the last, for example, 10 minutes. So find opportunities for movement on a day-to-day basis. And like I said before, the most important is that you enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, it's going to be a chore and you're going to look for excuses to not do it. But if you enjoy it and you look forward to it, it becomes
Can't
part of your
hear
day to
anything.
day.
Sound is off.
Selena, there's somebody that mentioned in a chat, it says, rebounding is a mild trampoline. I heard that it was good for post-cancer and I've been using it for a few months now and I really enjoy it and I bounce to music.
Oh, that's a fantastic idea, because then it's something you like to do. And it's cardiovascular, and it also does it also has resistance training components. So you're checking off multiple boxes all at the same time. So good for you for doing that. It gets blood flow going. So that's fantastic. So ultimately,
I have another question,
oh,
Selena.
please do.
Um, I know that, there's a lot of psychological or motivational factors that come into actually being able to exercise. And I
Yeah,
was wondering if you had any strategies that you could share with us to, help us stay motivated or even get motivated, after you've been sick, for example, or you've
yeah,
had an injury. Sometimes the psychological part of it is really hard to deal with, and it can stop you. So
yeah.
just if you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. I think the most important thing for things like that, and th this is like, I wish I had a magic answer for it, but I think what tends to be, what tends to provide the best results is that um, be kind to your body and don't have expectations that surpass where you're at. Sometimes it's better just to kind of slow down a little bit. And sometimes, like for example, if you were sick or you were injured or you underwent treatment, you have a habit of saying, well, but I did this before. Or I used to be able to do this. And even if you're not sick, even if you haven't been active for a long time, you have a tendency to compare yourself with where you were at one state before, or even you compare yourself to the person on the treadmill beside you. And I think it's really important. Don't compare yourself. Be where you are right now and feel comfortable where you're at, and don't discourage yourself by saying, I should be better at this, or I should be working harder, and why is this person able to do this, or I used to be able to do that. I think it's really important when you start, don't set any expectations. Just enjoy where you're at. You're following your prescription. You pay attention to that, but don't set up these expectations where you become discouraged, because I think that's where people tend to um, shortchange themselves or to get discouraged, because they're not doing what you think where you think you should be at. So we become our worst critic. Um, so I think that actually for me would be the best guideline, that you say, okay, you know what, today this felt like a 9 on 10, but it should have been a 6. But you know what, I'm going to back it up a little bit. I'm going to get through it. I'm able to do it. And tomorrow's another start. And I think the other thing too, that when we do miss a bout of exercise training, we just said, okay, you know what, we're going to do it again tomorrow. Because I find sometimes when people beat themselves up because, oh, well, I missed it again. Okay, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to go back to it again, and not think, well, I haven't done it in a while, so it's like it's not intended for me, or I'm never going to be good at this. No, just say, okay, we're going to start again. I think that's usually where I see people drop out of exercise the most often. So in short, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself. And then what's on this screen too is pick something you're willing to do, pick something that you're able to do, and pick something that you enjoy doing. And always keep in mind that something is always better than nothing. So I think to get back to your question or your statement, Debbie, I think that these are all really important aspects of maintaining an exercise program.
I love that answer. Thank you. We
You're
also
very
have
welcome.
a question here that's from our audience. It begins with a statement. So it's, ever since I had a mastectomy, my BMI
Mhm.
has been increased and it now reached an overweight level. By my oncologist, but my oncologist advised me not to lose weight. Is this a myth? Should cancer patients not lose weight?
I think it kind of really depends on the situation that you have. I think because one myth is that if you do a lot of exercise that you're going to lose weight. And really you will get discouraged very quickly because the amount of exercise that you have to perform or to burn enough calories to lose weight is quite a bit. Um, and so what I think it should be a combination, I think, between healthy eating and exercise. And sometimes when we start to exercise, lean muscle mass weighs more than fat. And so sometimes when we start an exercise training program and we convert fat into lean mass, we then get discouraged. So to get back to this point is that sometimes we should look less at the scale because we don't know physically what we're doing. And again, our weight might start to go up, but in fact, our bodies are getting healthier because we're exercising. And so I think it's more important to pay attention to how we're feeling, and our energy levels and how the physicality is, as opposed to looking at a number at a scale, because it really doesn't represent the whole picture. So I think for the doctor, I think maybe in this case, the shift to like becoming more healthy is more important than just looking at a number on a scale. And unfortunately, when you look at BMIs, it doesn't reflect the shifts in fat mass to lean mass. So it's giving us a very one-dimensional estimation of where you're at. If you are concerned about weight gaining, I would say talk to your doctor and maybe talk to a dietitian at the same time to make some healthy choices or healthy incorporations with exercise and dietary alterations, rather than just looking at a simple BMI measure or a measurement on a scale. That was a very long answer, sorry.
Thank you.
But it comes up often, and I think it's really important. And by the way, this was the last my last image. So the rest of the time is all yours for any questions that you might have. So I'll let Debbie be the question taker, deliverer.
So we have another question. A
Mhm.
common challenge among cancer patients is taking blood. Patients at taking blood is hard to find the vein. Any exercise to improve this condition?
I wish I had that simple solution, because sometimes it's just your own anatomy, because of where the vein is placed or the type of vein that you have. So the exercising, I don't know if that's going to be a solution to finding or getting better blood draws to happen. But on the other hand, when you start to exercise, your flow might be improved. So although the vein itself or the vessel itself might not have changed much, the flow might be better. So it might be once the needle or the catheter is in, it might be easier to do an actual draw. And we notice that a lot with kidney dialysis patients, that they tend to have better blood draws and dialysis goes faster. But the vessel itself might not be that improved. I have very hidden vessels, and every time I go to give blood, people hate me because it's so hard to find. So I empathize with that part, but I don't, like as I said, I think the flow might improve, but I don't know if you're going to get a lot of improvements of actual vessel structure.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions that we haven't already addressed in your presentation. So I think if I could just maybe do a profoundly quick summary, it would
You want
be
me to stop
something.
sharing?
No, yeah,
Okay.
sure. Up to you.
Okay, we'll do stop share so we can
Oh,
see you.
hold on. I just pumped up. I just received another question here. So before
Okay,
I do my little summary,
for sure.
the question is it important to be well hydrated to pump for the veins situation as well?
Yeah, I am going to get back to, I think that's a very important point. We didn't really cover hydration, but yes. Because part of what makes like a blood draw go easier is that you're like if you are properly hydrated, like we like to think of, like, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this one. I'm gonna use the example, like, that frozen juice stuff that you can buy, the frozen, like, orange juice or whatever. And when you take it out of the can, it's really like viscous and it's very thick. And it's hard to get anything. And if you were to take a straw on that, you couldn't really suck much up. But if you add water, all of a sudden it becomes nice orange juice, and it's easy to take like a sip out of it with a straw. Our blood kind of works a little bit the same. If you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous and more concentrated, and it could be a little thicker. So that hydration is really important, and that hydration not only for example, blood draws, but I think in general, hydration is so critically important because we rely on water for so many of our systems to operate properly, including our brains, our muscles, our blood, everything. So water is really, really important. And I know a lot of medications do dehydrate or have the tendency or could dehydrate. So I think it's important, especially when you're exercising, to keep a bottle of water nearby. And especially important when it's hot out. If you're exercising outside and you're sweating a little bit more, have that bottle of water nearby. Very important point.
Excellent. So I'm very aware of our time. Excuse me, we're a little bit over. So Selena, thank you so much for being with us. Again, my summary would be something like just move, find something that you love to do. Try to get it up to a level 6 at some point during the day. Be kind to yourself. Variety matters, and just enjoy it. I always say that at some point in my past lives, or in one of my past lives, I was a dog, because if you put a ball in front of me, I can run for hours, but just ask me to go on a treadmill, couldn't do it. So find what you love and just get moving.
Couldn't
Thank
have
you
said it
so
better
much.
myself.
I was taking notes for an hour. Thank you so much for joining us on this cold evening. And thank you all for your time and patience. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.